I'm Lance Priebe from HyperHippo. That's me. The CEO or reluctant CEO. I tend to think of myself as the creative guy at HyperHippo, so I keep the guys working. I was listening to the earlier speakers going, I must be the oldest LiveOps guy here, because when we did LiveOps back in Club Penguin's day, it wasn't called LiveOps. It was just surviving and staying up late with pagers. So, interestingly, my background's actually in web design. I was a web designer way back in the early 90s, building bulletin board systems and running MUDs. Anybody play a MUD? Now that was LiveOps. You know, the dial-ups, they're phoning into your apartment, everything is going off. Yeah, nobody liked me. I had 5 lines going into my apartment. Anyway. So I titled my talk, Listen, Test, and Build. This has been a growing philosophy of mine of how do I create with audience feedback. And that's something very, very important to me. I'm not a big fan of get a great big idea, build a big game, and then just ship it and launch it and hope it works and then fix it later. No, it's about launching little experiments and learning from your audience immediately and then adapting and growing. And something I've been trying over the years to perfect and get better at. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the little history I've done and some of the lessons I've learned, some of the things I've picked up, and some ideas I have for the future where hopefully Playfab's writing down a list of feature lists that I want. So here we go. My whole career actually started back at this program. Flash 3, ooh. And then immediately after that, Flash 4 came out. I was a web designer, running the John Deere dealer networks, keeping all their orders and everything organized. And then Flash 3 came out, I started working on that. And Flash 4 came out, and that was the introduction of ActionScript. And I think Adobe announced this week they're actually finally killing it. I think that was the announcement. And this set my whole career in motion. And with ActionScript, I could finally build a game without having to ask all my programmer friends to actually get off their butts and help me, but they didn't. So they missed out. My first game I made was Ballistic Biscuit back in 1999. Built this for a camp to help promote it for kids. I was one of the earliest web game developers out there working with Yahoo. I was one of the launch developers for miniclip.com, all sorts of interesting things. But as a web designer, my nature was always to build with a live audience. That audience, as soon as you put something on the internet, they told you if it worked or didn't work. It was right away. I was also obsessed with Ultima Online. Anybody played it? Am I really getting old here now? This is like pre-World of Warcraft, everything. Absolutely obsessed. And somehow I had the bright idea that I thought I could build an MMO in Flash larger than Ultima Online. Yes! Anyway, okay, keep moving. My original idea was Snow Blasters. It was going to be the world's largest snowball fight. Massive multiplayer, kids, parents, people, I don't care who showed up. We're going to run around, create characters, and battle. One of the largest war games ever. This was like 98, 99 when I had this idea. Originally, the idea was too big. I thought, no, I can't do this just by myself in the basement. There's no way. So I decided to do something a little smaller. So I created experimental penguins. All that did is a little penguin walked around, he talked, and that was it. This was launched in early 2000, and the feedback was overwhelming. I was trying to run this by myself in Flash 4. If anybody remembers 2000, bandwidth cost a fortune. There was no CDNs. There wasn't cloud computing. There was no Amazon. Well, there was Amazon the bookstore. That was it. This game almost killed me. I actually got within about the first 6 to 7 months, I got to about 1 million players. I was running concurrent season to 1,000 people at a time. And won, if you guys remember, the Cool Site of the Day Awards, all that stuff, way popular, early 2000s, all that stuff. It was awesome. And I remember miniclip.com asking me, can you get it for their website? And I said, not until I get it stable. I couldn't figure out how to get it stable in 2000, 2001. I actually took it offline, hid for about 2 years. And learned a couple lessons from the fans. They did not want a big game. They did not want an epic snowball war. They did not want any of that. They wanted a little world where they created penguins and talked to their friends, and it was a safe place to hang out. And that was a very interesting amount of feedback, which set the course for me to build the next version, which was Penguin Chat. It came out in about 2002, 2003. And this I continued to operate online, maintain it, work on word filters, work on different features. Everybody could talk, emote, etc. And that eventually, in 2005, I partnered with Dave Crisco and Lane Merrifield, and we created the Club Penguin that millions of kids play. Actually, the total account of accounts created is over 350 million penguins. So it's pretty impressive. Club Penguin was pretty amazing. So in 2005, we partnered it. A little quick introduction to Club Penguin if you guys aren't familiar with it. It was one of the largest kids virtual worlds. I'm using it past tense. The Walt Disney Company acquired it from my partners and I in 2007. We sold it to Disney, and this last March, I think it was, is when they finally shut it down. So that's a long running series, and I'm going to go a little bit into how we actually maintained content and live operations for Club Penguin. In Club Penguin, the story is always unfolding. It's an ever-changing and a dynamic environment. The elements of surprise, discovery, and roleplay saturate the experience, and imagination makes everything possible. How we made that happen was we did non-stop regular content updates. Every week we released new content. This world just kept growing and growing and growing. A little different than free-to-play. Those words didn't exist when we launched this. This was game as a service. It was very critical to win that next month subscription. So it was a subscription-based service. So it was constantly telling the audience, what are you gonna miss out on, or what are you gonna miss if you don't subscribe for next month? Did you enjoy this month? So lots of content release and lots of events. As a team, we actually grew from 2005 to 2006. We grew to over 400 people. And then by 2007, we were over 800 people worldwide in offices in Sao Paulo, Brighton, England, Sydney, Australia, and Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada, where I'm from. And then when the Disney acquired us, we added a studio in Burbank as well. So every single month, we took our little town, our village, hundreds and hundreds of little rooms. The team would spend endless hours decorating. So this is for Halloween. We'd put together the whole idea for the event, the activities. The kids would have a new experience every single month to participate in. This was a team of about 80 artists just working on this. We'd come up with new items that decorated all their characters. We'd use our newspaper to promote all the events to the users every single week. This paper came out. By the way, the Club Penguin Times, on a Thursday release every single week, had more readers than the New York Times, LA Times, and the Boston combined. Our Saturday mornings, we would have over 1 million DAU with 200,000 concurrencies back in 2006, 2007, just running this thing. A little bit of the tech people in the room. There was almost 1,000 servers running to make this work. There was no cloud, no scaling. We just kept adding physical boxes, and my pager would just ring, 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 ring. And then we'd throw the party, and the millions and millions of kids would show up and come and hang out. It was pretty epic. I want to talk a little bit about just the feedback loop. I'm not going to dive too deep into the live ops of Club Penguin. I'm just going to say it was hell, okay? I'm just going to flat out say it. I actually went to the hospital. It was so stressful. The team that I worked with, most of us took medical leaves. I remember not celebrating some Christmases because the servers would go down. I remember every Thursday night actually FTPing all the files for every single week's content. Not the way to build a system. So, but we kept doing it. We kept hiring people, and we manually maintained the entire system. And this is the past I'm talking about here. But what was great was building with an audience. The kids gave us endless feedback, so they would constantly see these shadows in the world. and they always thought they were ninjas. So we started playing off the event and started adding ninjas into the world. So there's actually a ninja hidden in the top right corner in the window up there. And this became one of our largest mini games or aspects of Club Penguin, was the Club Penguin Ninjas. And it grew so large that we actually became one of the top trading cards in 2008, 9 from Topps. We became a toy line. We got Toys R Us just off of Ninja Penguins. Very humorous. Another thing what happened is this is just Brazil players. They just started organizing and getting together and letting the team know that they wanted a Brazilian server done in Portuguese. So our first language that we launched in, out of all the languages in the world, was actually, we launched in Portuguese, we launched in Brazil, and we set up our first foreign office in Brazil. And Brazil became one of our largest player bases as we continued to grow. Some of the fun facts: we launched in October 2005, it closed March 2017. We've been running live events for 12 years. There's over 1 million DAU just on a Saturday morning, and 350 million penguins so far to Club Penguin. Live ops wise, I remember endless stories. We actually worked originally with Pier 1, that was our hosting center and data center. I remember phone calls from them saying they don't know what to do. Our database physically melted. They sent us pictures of all the memory chips melted into the board. We're like, oh dear. I remember my support team working with we used the MySQL database. I remember my technical team working with the team that builds MySQL, the open source team, trying to solve the problem that our computers were losing track of time because time was slipping because of how much requests we were sending to the databases that we couldn't keep up. It was just insane stuff. And I shared about missing Christmas. I remember that one Christmas morning. Christmas is our absolutely busiest day. For a children's property, what happens usually is parents gave you the gift of the toy or whatever it was, and then of course the kids ran to a computer and started playing. So that's the little history. That's where I come from. I swore to never do manual live ops ever again. Don't do it. Don't build your own stuff. One of the lessons I learned was I regret and I wish we would have invested more in the tools so that the team could focus just on the game and building and working with the community. After I left Disney in 2010, I had this ambitious idea to actually build this huge new world of back to war games and battle characters and creatures and stuff, so called mech mice. This took about 2 years to build. Took about $2 million, launched in 2013. I had 800,000 downloads and made revenue of less than $1,000. It was a complete failure. Reason here is believed I was listening to the audience, but I wasn't doing any analytics. I wasn't checking the audience. I wasn't testing what they were doing, and I didn't learn any lessons really. I came off Club Penguin, big high ride, like wild ride there. Built this big ambitious idea, thought the audience was demanding this type of product, didn't actually check it against anything in analytics, measurement and stuff, and I didn't test anything. I made the game too big, and I couldn't adapt the game and change my course to build a game that the audience wanted to play. So listen, test early. So that was the first Hyper Hippo. That's when we started. We made that game. And then we decided as Hyper Hippo, okay, time to regroup, rethink, and we laid off half the team. I told the team, you have 6 months left. We're about to run out of money. You have to go find a game. But I want us to measure it, test it, start using tools, getting analytics, and gathering information about what the audience is looking for. We built about 80 games. And out of those games, this game was born. This game honestly just blew my mind. I have a little note I wanted to write here just to make sure I got this right. I gotta be honest, when the team pitched to venture capitalists, you guys, a lot of people raise their hands, right? You know, it's this game, you click, you squeeze lemons. I thought the pitch was ridiculous. Absolutely, I thought it was a joke. I said, how could squeezing lemons and tapping progress bars be any bit fun. I was wrong, and largely because we started doing this listening and testing. We reached out to the audience. We started listening to what the audience wanted. The audience wanted idle games. It blew my mind. Within about the first week to 2 weeks, we already had over 1 million players. To just give you a little scale there. We tested this on Congregate's website first, and then started building it for mobile. The growth of this game was unbelievable, and thanks to PlayFab, we were able to solve a lot of our problems as we built out this game. And here's some pictures of, you guys have all played it. You tap along, you build, you get managers, you do stuff. We run events every couple weeks now. We put in a new event, everything's themed and stuff like that. We launched it on Congregate in May 2014. Started getting, that was that couple million players that started telling us all about idle games. We discovered this thing called idle and clickers. It was insane. And we launched on mobile, and we were featured by Apple and Google at the time. Interestingly, we also launched on Steam, and this is a very popular Steam game where you tend to trend in their top 100 or sometimes falling to 200 depending on what game's popular right now. And the last one, just I shake my head. Just we were the first idle game on PlayStation, and we're doing quite well on PlayStation as well. But we continue testing. We've got 25 million installs. We got day 1 of over 65%, day 30 at 20%. And the best number I love here is actually there's been 1 quadrillion lemon squeeze so far. It's just, yeah. But this game was tricky. A lot of you, if you grab PlayFab's little brochure and stuff, there's a lot of our story. We've been working with PlayFab as they first came out. We're one of their first partners. We had a huge learning curve to start really. We were listening to our audience. We're building with what the audience wanted, but we weren't keeping up with the ability to adapt the game to the audience. So with PlayFab, with a lot of our partnership with them, we were able to get into just some basic things like receipt verification, etc. But we're also to dive deep into segmentation and figuring out who our audience is and notifying them and bringing out the events as we need them and tracking different aspects of it, and of course analytics and driving all our decisions for our building. I like to make this joke. The lesson we learned from a venture capitalist was hire a manager to do all the work. Yes, so we hired PlayFab. It was pretty good. But what are we doing next? So the next thing we're following up is actually Adventure Communist, if you haven't been following along. And this game's a little bit deeper. What we've learned from our audience is that idle games we thought were going to be casual. Was very fascinating is they're closer to a mid-core game. It's usually people that have run out of time, but they love min-maxing, so that's what they want to do. So this game's a little bit of a deeper dive, a little bit more systems to play with, a lot more planning and different organizations of resources to go through. Everything in Adventure Communist is now built off of almost every feature that PlayFab offers. We are able to switch, change buttons, change pricing, change any of our balance live at any time as we get any of our feedback from the audience or we find a bug. We can service it immediately. And that was something we didn't do in the launch of Adventure Capitalist. We're going to do it in Adventure Communist. We've been quietly testing this game on Steam since last year, and we're secretly testing it on mobile right now, and everything's hush-hush because it's communist, you know. So we got to be careful. I keep joking we're Canadian, of course. Everybody says, when's the Adventure Socialist coming? But we'll get there. And we'll keep going with that. So I strongly believe, and what I want biggest takeaway is our future depends on our ability to build an audience, and our audience comes from working with them. We heard from Riot Games, it's not just live ops, it's about what the customer sees is going on and what they feel is going on. And I love as a designer not to get ahead of the audience. I like to actually stop, build my minimum product I can, and then get as much feedback as I can, but not just listen to don't just take the feedback, because what I learned with the Mech Mice project was they all said, this is great, this is great, this is great, but also dive deep, get the analytics, get the different programs going. That's going to teach you, well, what they're saying is their actions aligning with the feedback that you're receiving, and then start making design decisions. You're going to make a great game with an audience that loves you at that point. I tormented James a little bit. I love doing, I'm a big fan now of using the tools out there. Get your analytics tools, work with PlayFab, work with any service provider that can help you with LiveOps. Get that. Why? Because then you can go live life. So I'm waiting for PlayFab to sponsor my mountain biking career. So far they just give me free t-shirts, but that's all I got for you guys. And happy to take a bunch of questions.
How do you determine when your MVP is enough to put out there?
Oh, my team hates me every single day. You'll never know. I tell my team to put it out there anyway. The best part you can do is, what I've learned is, so a venture capitalist, if you Google around what is its first version is actually just a bunch of text boxes that you clicked. That's it. But what people, I think as game designers, we think we need to put a lot more polish into it and be a lot more prepared. We don't. What you need to do is just get enough validation, right? So is 1,000 people enough just to give you that first taste? Then just put it out and then pull it away. Just take it offline. Don't be afraid to kill it. Give it a different name. If you're nervous about your brand or something, just give it a different name. White label it, test it. We do a lot of that at HyperHippo. We actually come up with fake company names, so you can go Google Baron Trout Games, just stuff. We just make up companies, put them on the internet, put them in the mobile store, try the game, buy a couple ads and test it. But I wouldn't wait. Get that feedback. So I jumped around a bunch. There's a whole bunch there. The Club Penguin story is pretty awesome. Live ops wise, it was insane. I can't believe we actually manually pulled it off. I saw some slides from, I think, Space Ape showing Post-it notes. We used to have hallways of Post-it notes planning out what the event was. The insanity was as we get to Thursday midnight, and myself and Kevin Yockey would sit there watching we'd use Qt FTP program to upload all the files to the servers, and then resync all the servers' clocks so that the files had the same date stamps so they wouldn't cause a caching problem. And then we'd watch it. We manually did it.
Hey, so I had a question around the community aspect and listening to your players. How do you balance out the vocal minority that we all hear that are super passionate about our game with the larger, more silent base of the game, and how do you balance out the feature requests, and how do you balance what players really want?
Oh, that was constant conversation. So Club Penguin, we found it was interesting is that the vocal minority also ran pretty much all the fan blog websites. So there was this balance you had to take, because if you didn't take a nod to this loud voice, they also drove an audience. It was hard. These are kids, and they're swayed really quickly as to what the ideas are, and they all went into you guys have any small kids that play soccer? It's that whole mob ball thing. We would take the strong feedback, we would always acknowledge it, then we would run some sort of test. We would put a mystery in, or a myth, or try it as a small event, or just put it in one room, or do something, and then actually start tracking it. So record how many people actually engaged, how many people bought the item, how many people stayed around, did it increase retention? We look at one of the metrics as to how this item thing before we did a whole plan. There were a couple big flops we did, and there was a couple huge successes. We had a large vocal group that said they wanted a Western theme in Club Penguin. It was probably our worst party of all time. The number of people that unsubscribed from our subscription service because it was cowboys, I was like, what? So, but interestingly, after the Disney acquisition, there was a scary point. The vocal audience did not want takeovers, so Disney started putting takeovers in. Yet, when the Frozen movie came out, The Frozen takeover was the most successful party of its entire history. That month was insane. They extended the party for all the 30 days, and it just drove subscription like crazy, because everybody should just, let it go. I hope that helps. It's a tough one. You got to compare the two. Listen to the feedback, but also test against it. Do something that you can actually measure some numbers against it.
Hi, Andrew from Space Ape Games. I was wondering, do you worry about losing your first to market or competitive edge when you're throwing these MVPs up on the store, like someone just seeing it and copycatting you?
No.
No?
No.
All right.
That's why we're hyper. Our job is to be the first person to knock off our own game. That's the way I see it. See it as we're a bunch of indies that put together ideas. They put it up on the store, and if it takes off, we as a studio have to be able to run so fast to keep up with it. Venture Capitalist was hard. It was hard to catch up with how fast that game was growing. And you can go online and look up the different YouTube videos and stuff. James might be able to point everybody to the direction. When we started working with PlayFab, just the amount of scale in our first year was insane. Just running an event and the number of sales we'd get, what items we'd sell, it was tough. But I know Eastside Games is here, and a couple other guys. We all laugh about idle games, so it's quite humorous how many call it competitors. I don't know. Everybody's knocking us off. Great. We're going to be first because we're just going to keep running faster. So
I'm curious, how did you determine to do the communist version? Was that testing that, or it was more?
Sorry, say the word again?
The Adventure Communist.
Well, the Adventure Communist one? We thought it was the most logical sequel to The Capitalist. So we're making fun of capitalists already. Remember, we're Canadian. And we thought it'd be interesting to make fun of the communists. So the Adventure Communist one's an interesting spin on it. It's actually creating world domination through growing potatoes. So it's potato resource management is actually the game. It's quite hubris. And at all times, what I'm most fascinated about is the two games are actually going to play off each other. The communist guy's going to bug the capitalist, and the capitalist will be in the communist game. So I'm interested to see what both games do together.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lance.